Hello everybody, welcome to Hearts of Oak. I'm Gerard Batten for this special edition with an interview and a chat with Tommy Robinson. Hello Tommy.
Good to see you, mate.
And before we go any further, don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button, because Hearts of Oak needs that to build up its viewing figures so that we know that you like it out there. So please tell us you do by hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, having said that, very pleased to talk to Tommy. I haven't actually spoken to Tommy face to face since the Old Bailey trial.
Is that what it was?
You went back into Belmarsh, and we'll talk about that shortly.
Okay.
Can I just recap for the benefit of the audience of how we came to know each other and how we come to be here today? And I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible. But of course, this goes back to I think about 2009, 2010, when the EDL was in the news. And I was in my car and listening to the BBC radio, and of course they branded it and you as far right and extreme right. And I thought, well, if the BBC is saying that, then I'm not going to take that at face value. I need to know more about it. And of course, then you went on to Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman.
Yeah.
What year was that? Can you remember?
That was 2010. Maybe.
2010. And I watched it and I thought, well, this man doesn't look extreme right to me. He doesn't look far right. He looks like he's telling the truth. He's saying things that I can understand and agree with. And also, you took on Paxman and did very well. I mean, I think at the time you were about 27. You were young and not experienced in the ways of the mainstream media.
I was worried. I was scared.
You did very well. You did very well indeed. So I was very impressed with that. Anyway, so things moved on.
You know, I read your 2009. I don't know when you wrote it about Islam.
The Muslim Charter of Understanding.
The Muslim Charter of Understanding. One of the first things I read.
Yeah, well, I actually just edited that, if you like, and wrote I wrote the foreword, and then I wrote the affirmation at the end. But that was all done by an ex-Sharia lawyer,
Sam Solomon.
Yeah, who understands the subject inside out. But we can maybe say something about that later. But anyway, so the next thing we got round to about March 2018, where I met you in Birmingham, where there was a veterans rally. Yep. You at that time, just after that, did an interview with Malcolm Pearson, yep. Lord Pearson, who was a UKIP peer, which was a very good interview. And I was asked if you could interview me, and I said yes, great, happy to. And we did that hour-long interview, which I think you can probably still find on YouTube, yep. Where we talk, I very much enjoyed that, and I think people found that very informative about what I wanted to do with the leadership of UKIP at the time. And then, of course, things moved on. You were going to pursue your new career as an independent journalist. And, of course, that led you to Leeds. Before that, tell a lie, before we move on, there was the free speech, March for Freedom and Free Speech.
Day for Freedom. Which
was great, fantastic. And I was amazed how you managed to get that organised so that you could be in Whitehall, yep. Not far from Downing Street. It was a lovely summer's day. You had lots of speakers. It was a very hot day, lots of speakers. I was one of them, I'm very pleased to say. We spoke about free speech and the importance of free speech. And then, of course, you went to Leeds to film the court case there, a grooming court case, where you were arrested on contempt of court accusations, and you were banged up in prison straight away after about 5 hours in the cells, and you were in solitary confinement, I think, for about 10 weeks, something like that. So there were more rallies. There was one on the, let me think now, there were a couple of free Tommy Robinson rallies which I spoke at, and I said something then, two things actually, because I was going through last night what I'd actually said and reminded myself, and I said two things. I said that you were a political prisoner. I believe that now more than ever. And one thing I said was that most of the governments of the Western world now, and certainly of Britain, are enemies of their own people. And I believe that now, and we can talk about unfolding events at the moment to prove that to be true. So I said that you were a political prisoner. And what I said, I got attacked on LBC and other media outlets where I went on to be interviewed because I was defending you. And I said, when I was attacked, I said, I'm not saying it's not contempt of court. What I'm saying is the proper procedures weren't followed and you should have had a proper hearing. And I was proved right, because you then went to the Old Bailey. That was in October 2018, wasn't it?
There's so many guidelines. So they even for contempt of court, they're supposed to have a sign on the door to tell you that there's reporting restrictions. They didn't. It's supposed to be on the screen. It wasn't. I
don't know whether you wrote this or your lawyers wrote this, but this was that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. It was your submission.
Oh, it's good because I've been. Have you got a copy of it there?
Yeah, I've got it, but that's not it. I just
okay, good because I've been looking for a copy of it.
Yeah, the submission that you did to the court. I read it the night before because someone sent it to me, and I read it, and I thought, well, it's obvious from this that you haven't committed any contempt of court at all. We went into, and I was in the public gallery for that hearing, and I thought we'd be in there all day because I've been in a few court hearings now, and they tend to be very, very protracted. But we went in there at 10 o'clock, I think it was. We thought we'd be there till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The judge read your submission. He said to the lawyers, basically, thank you very much for all your hard work. I'm not going to hear this. This is going to be kicked upstairs.
He sent it back to the government.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say that literally, but what he said was, I'm not going to deal with this. It's going to go to a higher authority. And that higher authority was the Attorney General, Geoffrey Cox, a Conservative MP, who then had the job of fitting you up, basically. And you had to wait another. When did you go back? You didn't go back until July 2019.
It was gone. Yeah. It was gone. So, and what my solicitor said, and he said, no, that's gone. They're never going to bring. He actually said they're not going to bring this back into the court.
Yeah.
Because it's embarrassed them already. My statement proved every part of my innocence. When it was laid out in such lame and simple terms, it's like I didn't do anything wrong. Then, in the most changing week of my life, probably was when Panorama come out.
Yeah.
And within 48 hours of Panorama coming out, I was recharged.
That was terrific. I mean. That was
and deleted from the world.
That was absolutely terrific. And let me say this: I grew up, watching the BBC. I got a lot of my education from the BBC, and there were only 3 channels when I was young. There was 2 channels when I was very young, and it's more and more propagandised. And when that undercover bit where you had the journalist, what was his name?
John Sweeney.
Sweeney. Where he said, he was trying to relate to you and the people that follow you, and when he was talking about the working class generally, I think they are like Amazonian cannibals or space aliens, and I thought that sums up exactly what you think about.
That's the view of the
majority of people. So anyway, it went back to. You want to tell us a bit about that now? It went back to the Old Bailey for a trial, and you ended up in a maximum security prison, Belmarsh, in solitary confinement.
So when you spell it out. We went to court. I was unlawfully taken off the streets. That was proven. It was proven I didn't have a trial. It's proven I wasn't even asked to plead guilty or not guilty. I was released from custody. They then, out of embarrassment, took me back to the High Court. I thought to find me guilty, but say, okay, you've served your time. That's what I thought it was about. Yeah. So I produced my document to the highest judge of the Old Bailey, the highest judge. He read it and summed it up and thought, I'm not having this on my plate, and because he knew it was a stitch up. So he sent it back to the Attorney General and said, you need to sort it out. The Attorney General then kicked into the grass. Then Panorama were participating in fitting me up. We've seen so much now about Princess Diana. It's quite current this week. We've seen them lie about Syria. We've seen all these lies. So Panorama, which the British public were trusting, was being used by the British government to demonise, slander and destroy whoever got in their way. That's basically... And I was next on that chain. And I think the reason why Panorama, they actually started their investigation into me when I was in jail. So 30,000 people marched on London, protests across the world. My profile goes through the roof. It had the total opposite effect to what they wanted. They're then thinking, we've got to finish this guy. Yeah, we'll finish him. How are they going to finish him? Sexual allegations, which is what they were doing. Fake sexual allegations. They needed to discredit me to the British public, which I still believe they're working on now, but they needed to discredit me to the British public. We uncovered it, we exposed it. Within 48 hours, Labour government and Conservative politicians had contacted YouTube. They stood and spoke about it in Parliament. They had me removed from YouTube, my Facebook was closed, and within 48 hours I was faced with another prosecution for the only way they could prosecute me for the contempt of court charges was by changing completely the charge. So at first they said I jeopardised the trial. That was gone. They accepted I hadn't jeopardised the trial because 3 other judges who had already looked at it had said there was nothing he said in that hour-long video that could have prejudiced the jury. So that's gone. So then they changed the law to be in that I caused fear and offence of the paedophile. So I caused the Muslim paedophiles who were walking into court to feel a bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's what I was then sentenced to, 10 months in jail. And and then I went to Belmarsh.
Well, let me say something there, because when I was defending you, of course, and I went on the BBC, LBC, and all of the scum media that you can think of. I went on and did interviews, and they said, you're a criminal, basically. And I said, look, he's pleaded guilty and accepted that he's done certain things which are criminal. None of them are violent, none of them are actually serious offences. So if any of the readers haven't read it, any of the viewers haven't read it, in this book, Tommy's Enemy of the State, which I read in order to find out more about him, he freely admits to some of the things that he's done, which he has got convictions for, but a lot of the things that he's got convictions for, he was actually fitted up. Were not real crimes.
I had one conviction when I was 21 years old, yeah. And then I started the English Defence League at the age of 25. And within 2 years, I'd been in court every month for the next 2 years. And I've been in court every month. I'm actually in court 3 times in the next 6 weeks now.
Well, I was going to come on to that, but could we say a bit about Belmarsh first? Because there you are, even though it was a trumped-up charge and a political charge and a political conviction, for contempt
it's a civil
case, which nobody actually, as you pointed out in your submission, has gone to prison for in 60 years. And you had contempt of court committed by the Daily Mail and the Daily Mirror, if I've got it right, in the Millie Dowler case.
And Stephen Lawrence murder trial.
And they got a slap over the wrist, a £10,000 fine, I think. And the same was true of Spectator magazine and Rod Liddell, who I don't quite know whether they collapsed the trial with.
No, I think they did collapse the trial.
They got a very, basically to give a big magazine £10,000 fine is just petty cash. But you went to Belmarsh prison, and I've never been inside a prison before in my life, and I'd never want to go back inside one, but I went to visit you in Belmarsh summer of 2019, wasn't it?
Yep.
And it's at least it isn't one of these terrible Victorian, it's a nice modern prison, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not like the old Bedford or Wandsworth.
But tell us a bit about what was that like?
So do you know what, it was hard to accept, and the reason it was hard to accept is because I'd done 11 weeks of solitary in Onley, which it did affect me, when I come out.
I saw that, yeah.
So I then thought, it's even if I was guilty, which I wasn't, it's a non-violent crime. You've already locked me up for 11 weeks of solitary confinement. You've had it hanging over my head. You've now took me back to court again. So when I got to the jail, I said, this is a civil offence, It's a non-violence offence, and it's a category D offence, which means you go to an open prison.
Yeah.
But instead, here I am, on solitary confinement again. I walked into Belmarsh and walked out without seeing another prisoner. Totally on my own, other than my visits, when I got my visits. Totally on my own. And it still was hard to stomach, because I just think, how can you get away with that? How can they get away, not just get away with it, but be applauded and celebrated by everybody, the media. And while we're on it, I don't know whether you regret it. I always think, I wonder if he regrets ever talking out for me. Because I've sat and watched your interviews, and I've sat and watched you getting grilled and hammered, and it's all about me.
Yeah, I know.
And I sit there thinking, and I admire the fact, because most people would have thrown me under the bus after 5 minutes. Most people, and I actually say to people, when I meet people, I say, if you ever want to, mate, just throw me under the bus, because I know the heat and pressure that's going to come with siding with me, being seen next to me, associating with me. I've managed to become Toxic Tommy, and that's what I say. I say, Toxic Tommy strikes again. If someone loses their job, someone gets a grief, someone gets insulted, something happens. So I watched the effect. And I felt bad watching it. And I felt bad because I just thought, oh man.
Well, it wasn't just you, it was also Islam. Because I'd said, I was thinking in response to a terrorist attack or something, I'd said that Islam is a death cult. Which I think is a perfectly reasonable thing to say if you actually understand what it is. That is not criticising Muslims, because I don't know how many of them believe this claptrap anyway. That's between them and their conscience. But every time I went on the TV, I'd get invited on. This happened to me with Peston, it happened to me with LBC, Matt Fry, other things. Can you come on and talk about Brexit? Yeah, are you going to talk about Tommy Robinson? Oh, his name might come up. And of course the Daily Politics, the Joe Coburn interview, which has gone down as a landmark, I think.
They were all, so as I'm watching them, I'm going like that, because
I went on there, and I went on there to talk about Brexit, because I never ever wanted to go on and talk about Islam or Tommy Robinson. And what did I get attacked on? Islam, Tommy Robinson, Islam. Because this is the way the media works. They are not interested in the truth about anything. Now, I was the only politician in the country that actually wrote a plan on how you could leave the European Union. And with 4 years and 4 months, 4 years, 4 months later after the referendum, we still haven't really left. We've left in name, we've not left in reality, and I don't believe we're going to leave at all. But they're not interested in how it could be done. All they wanted to do was attack me. And I don't regret standing up for you, even though, you know, UKIP unfortunately now is dead to all intents and purposes, and I feel very bad about that. But I don't regret sticking up for you because it was the right thing to do. Before I met you and we did that first interview, obviously I looked into you, I spoke to Malcolm Pearson. If I'd thought you were right-wing or extreme right or racist, then I wouldn't have had anything to do with you. I wouldn't have done, because if I'd have wanted to do that, I could have got involved in that kind of politics any time in the last 40 years. I didn't want to. It's not what I wanted to do. UKIP was a democratic party, it believed in our own sovereignty and national independence. But you have to stand up for what's right sometimes. But I think what happened there is now any politician who saw what happened to me is never going to speak the truth about Islam now, or try to defend someone like you because they've seen what it does to their careers.
And that's why they done it.
That's why they did it.
It's a certain example. Yeah. And do you know, like you say that, so every time I was ever invited onto Paxman, invited onto Daily Politics, everyone I was invited onto, again, it was a setup. They had something waiting every time. They fought. Like when I watched with Joe Coburn, I watched Eat 100 of them thinking, do they think that this is... British public don't like bullying.
Yeah.
And that's all it was. And that's all it is each time. I think they're actually digging their own holes here, because anyone watching it is just not going to be happy with the way they've interviewed, even if they don't like your politics.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. Even if people don't like your politics, they'll be thinking, hold on, this isn't right while I'm watching it. So I actually quite like it when they fall into their own traps.
Well, the worst one I had, I think, because it was so horrible, was when I did a Saturday morning with Matt Fry, another, you know, Marxist, cultural bloody Marxist BBC clone, who was on the LBC with his own show, and he relentlessly attacked me for half an hour. I relentlessly defended myself, and that afternoon we got 500 more members in UKIP in one afternoon. At the end of that, when we were off air, I said, why do you call me far right? Because you are. I said, I'm not. I don't do anything far right. I don't say anything far right. Why do you call me far right? Because you are. So
because I say you are.
I got up and left before I, you know, could say something that I might be intemperate. So I thought, that's it. I'd never go back. And in the final week of the European election campaign, I just stopped going on the media. There was no point.
Yeah, there is no point.
There was no point.
When we can become your own media.
Since then, I've never spoken to the mainstream media since, and I never will again. Yeah. I'm not in politics anymore, but if I was, I still wouldn't speak to them.
There's no point.
There's no point. You've got to have your own means of talking to the public, and they can make up their own minds. I'm talking too much. Tell us a bit about Belmarsh. What's it like? Because you're in solitary there.
Do you know what?
And you were in a cell very close to
Julian
Assange, I believe.
So I was in the prison within the prison, where I had my own unit. I think it was built for Ian Huntley. I think it was called the Huntley Suite originally, and then they call it a suite. It's a cell with another cell next door and then another shower room, but totally separated. So no one from outside of the prison anywhere else comes onto that unit other than the people, the two staff that work there. And in fact, you know what? Speaking, Onley was a hellhole for me the year before.
Yeah.
Belmarsh, whilst I totally was not happy with being totally isolated, I didn't want to be on my own. I wanted to see people. I didn't think I should be in a maximum security jail like that. The staff, the governor, were very accommodating and made sure that I got my visits, made sure that I had my rights. So yeah, Belmarsh was more positive. Do you know what? It was about 7 weeks in, I think I started having a wobble again, and I think I'm going home in a few weeks. It's a weird thing. I said, go sit in your bedroom on your own. I always say, go sit in your bedroom on your own for a week, just a week. Just sit in there on your own and don't come out of the room. And then do it for 3 months or so. Yeah. But they also know that, because when Ross Kemp was doing a documentary, he came down with the doctors and nurses. And I said in front of them, I said, you answer the question, is it good for a man's mental health in an era of mental health that we're in, where everyone talks about mental health and we're supposed to celebrate that everyone's free to talk about it and to try and combat it and stop it? I know the answer to this. Is it good for someone's mental health to lock them in isolation? No. So why are you doing it? Why am I locked here for the next 3 months when you know it's going to have an adverse effect intentionally for a non-violent crime that I've already spent 3 months on solitary confinement on? Why am I here? Like, what is this all about? Why can't I go to an open prison? Why can't I be locked at home with a tag round my ankle? Why couldn't you have done all these things? I know what it's about. It's about sending a message to the British public that they can do what they want and destroy who they want.
The reason the establishment and the media hate you is because you have this charisma, and people listen to what you say, and you are articulating what a lot of people think and feel, and they have got nobody to actually stand up for them. You know, the ordinary working class person of this country, they're not represented by the political parties. The media despises them, as we know. And you have a means of connecting with those people.
I had a means.
Pardon?
I had a means.
Well,
till they took it.
Yeah,
but we're up to nearly
social media.
Up to nearly 200,000 now on Parler.
You see, that's what they don't want. What they don't want is they don't want the voters saying to their MPs of whatever political party, "Why is this man talking about this stuff and you're not?" And God forbid they might actually go off and vote for somebody else who is talking about it. And there's nobody there now. Politics is dead, but we can move on to that in a minute. So you survived that. What amazes me is that how you come through all this. You're always still smiling. I don't think I would be in those circumstances.
No, I said this summer, I've said it in my last, when I met with Peter and Alan, this summer was my worst summer. And the 2 summers before that, I spent months on solitary confinement. So this summer was, do you know what? As my children have grown up and I've seen the effect that these things, that my politics and the has on them. So that's been more difficult. And then I've had a lot of family issues. And do you know what? It's like, whether it's their tactic or not, continuously, I'm in court. Where are we now? I'm in court on the 30th of November. I'm in court on the 23rd of November at the High Court, where I'm being sued. I'm in court on the 30th of November with the incident at Centre Parks. I'm in court in December, I believe, for where they're trying to ban me from football. I was due to answer bail on the 3rd of December for the case up in Barrow. I got arrested last Sunday, at Speaker's Corner. Now, Speaker's Corner, against all the advice and pleading of my family, as well as my lawyers, I decided to go to Speaker's Corner, because I haven't been that active. Although we have been active behind the scenes. People haven't seen a lot of me, but I've been working on documentaries behind the scene. So I watched Hatton, and I thought, you know what, I admire her, and I'm watching her fight. So I wanted to shine a torch on herself and her struggle for free speech in Speaker's Corner and the problems that come with that. So that's why I went against all the advice, and I went and I was arrested. Yeah. Again, and do you know what? It's so boring. It's like, again, every time I'm in the paper, it must be like, I don't know, but I was arrested for anyone who's watched it. I went in Speaker's Corner, I bought flowers and I bought chocolates. I went to her turn and thanked her for her struggle and fight. I handed her flowers and chocolates, and then I left. I did not bring a crowd purposely. I didn't arrange to meet anyone to go there purposely. I actually hired an independent security company of 10 men, because people want to kill me. Out of that 10 men, 3 of them were Muslims. When I turned up to meet the security company, he's called Mohammed, was the main man. Lovely bloke, Moroccan fella. And they actually had my security total. They said, "We'll get you in and we'll get you out, Tommy. We're here to." And I went and I hired them purposely, in the sense that they were independent. I don't know them, because I looked at all the COVID legislations. I wasn't organising a demonstration. I contacted the police and asked the liaison officer if I was breaking any laws. He confirmed I wasn't. I said, "I'm not coming with a crowd of my supporters. I'm not organising a march. I'm not organising a location." I walked in with 10 people, and I literally got out of the park and I see all the police straight away. I see them coming everywhere. I mean, like, literally the whole Met police force was there. They were just coming from everywhere. I thought, what now? And I'm literally, I could have made the police's job difficult. I could have gone to Speaker's Corner and stayed there for 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours. I could have got up and said something. I didn't go to give a speech because I wanted it to be about Hatton and her and what she's got to say. I wanted to shine the torch on her. So that's the only reason why I went there. And I left I must have been there 15 minutes. And I was out in the park, and boom, they come. And straight away they come, they surround us. And he says publicly, "I'm arresting you on suspicion of carrying an offensive weapon," which is, anyone who knows me, the only 2 weapons I have are them, and they're not even that great. But I didn't have a weapon, but I was arrested for an offensive weapon. And then that story then, and this is why I think they do it, that story goes across the media. I'm arrested for an offensive weapon. When I say, literally, as soon as I got booked into the police station, "We're de-arresting you for the weapon." And I'm like, what? Like, why did you arrest me for an offensive weapon then, if you're now de-arresting me for an offensive weapon? And then he says, "Now we're holding you under COVID legislation." And then the sergeant behind the desk says, "It was an inspector. How often do you get arrested by an inspector?" was an inspector who arrested me. The man who bent my arms up, if anyone who watched it, they twisted me up. Yeah. I've actually had to go to an osteopath. I've got bad rib muscles from where they bent my arms up, both of them. I think I was screaming like a little girl.
Yeah, I heard you on that. You were saying they were breaking your arms.
Yeah, but it felt like they were coming out of their sockets. But when I think about it, I didn't do anything wrong. Why were they bending my arms up like that? Why did they feel the need to drag me around, throw me around like that? Then take me to the police station. And then when they put me in, he de-arrested me. And then I saw the other sergeant go like that. And then he said, we're holding you under COVID. The other sergeant said, can I have a word with you, Inspector? And what I gathered from it is that they don't actually have grounds to hold you under COVID. Because he came over and said, right, the reason I'm detaining you is because we don't know where you live. I said, that's the reason you're detaining me now. He goes, well, I have to have a reason why you're being detained. And I'm like, oh, so COVID, you should have just been... And I looked at the inspector and said, you could have just come up to me and give me a fine, couldn't you? Or whatever it is you're trying to do me for. You could have just given me it. Why have you dragged me down here the way you've dragged me down here? And even in the police van, I was saying to him, I said, why have you thrown me around like that? I'm not known for resisting arrest. I'm not known for being abrupt towards the police. And then the fellow driving the van said, I've dealt with Stephen many times. He's always good with us. I said, but you've just bent me up. And do you know what? I said to the inspector, I said, you actually have done my job. My job is to expose a system that's unfair, that promotes favouritism towards minorities, that attacks the working class. These are all the things I try and prove with my work. And what you've done is last Friday you've allowed Muslims to call for the beheading of Macron outside the French embassy, and you've let them do it. Yeah. You've allowed Black Lives Matter to riot and smash up whatever they want, and you've allowed them to do it. You've allowed Muslims to march for Mohammed in their thousands with no social distancing, no face masks during the height of COVID, and you've allowed them to do it. And now you've just sent a message to everyone at home that you run a two-tier system where you're questioning me on what? COVID, what? Yeah. I've walked into a park and walked out. I've already agreed with your officers, which I record every conversation. I've already agreed that it was within the law. They didn't even try. So then they kept me there till 2 o'clock in the morning. And people who don't like me should still care about the law being abused. Yeah,
that's always been my point when I was defending you. If you'd have been some kind of BNP thug who was out to cause trouble, I wouldn't have bothered. But you weren't. You were a reasonable man doing something who'd been unjustly accused and arrested and imprisoned. And I felt if you don't stand up for people in those circumstances, you can't complain when it happens to somebody closer to you or to you yourself.
And what they do is, what have the media? So the media headlines go everywhere. Tommy Robinson arrested on COVID. Tommy Robinson arrested offensive weapon. Have I been charged with anything? No. I got released at 2 o'clock in the morning with no phone battery, with no phone on. 2 o'clock in the morning. I had £8 on me, and they let me out of Wandsworth Police Station. I said, okay, well, what am I meant to do now? I'm in the centre of London. I had 10 security for a reason, yeah? People want to kill me. You've just let me out in the centre of London. I'm so lucky, and thank you to the gentleman who had travelled and waited, yeah? So a lad pulled up and he'd waited and he took me to another lady's house who lived local and I got home, but I was arrested for nothing. I'd done nothing wrong. I wasn't just arrested, I was pretty violently arrested, thrown around, dragged down the police station. I think again and then about my mum, my children. I'm seeing all this on the news. Daddy's been arrested again. They'd all asked me not to go. I went, and then it's all just kicked in the long grass. And how many papers are going to report now to all the people they've told I was arrested for offensive weapon that I didn't do anything wrong?
Exactly, yeah. So after you were arrested, in inverted commas, at Speaker's Corner, and they let you out at 2 o'clock in the morning to find your own way home, I mean, that's disgraceful in itself. I mean, Speaker's Corner is supposed to be the home of free speech, but of course that's now been taken over by Islamic jihadists and Islamic radicals, or literalists as I like to call them, because they actually read it and believe it, as opposed to just pay it lip service. So that's bad enough. But you've had some other difficulties through the year now, without jeopardising any legal cases you might be in. Do you want to tell us? You've just had some charges dropped against you as well, I believe.
Yeah, which people, if we just cover this week. So that happens at Speaker's Corner, the headline does that. 6 months ago, I was covering a story that broke in Barrow called Justice for Ellie. It was a story of a young girl who had put images of herself, beaten black and blue. She'd been arrested, and she said she'd been groomed and raped by Muslim gangs in that town. I went and spent 2 weeks in Barrow. I interviewed families, I met people, I met men, I went to the Muslims' businesses. I sat with the Muslim families.
Yeah.
The police had come out and said there was no grooming going on in Barrow. Yeah, that was their statement. That's a lie. That is a lie. Yeah, but what I witnessed in Barrow was trial by public opinion, which I face a lot of. So I can't. When a story doesn't fit my narrative or our narrative, I'm there to find the truth. And if I start uncovering things and it doesn't look like the truth fits our narrative, then that's my job to tell people that. Yeah. So I'm investigating this story, and then I travel, and I'm a young boy who I've looked up this man. His mum and dad gave the police £500,000 donation. Yeah, £500,000. This is his family. Yeah?
His family
had give away £500,000. They own a massive motorbike company. Yeah.
Yeah.
He is the typical child of one of these privileged families. He is a liberal, an LGBT
devotee.
Yeah, devotee. I don't know how to put it. He's come up to me anyway, and he's called me a racist. Now, I record everything. Everyone knows that, yeah? So I have a recording of all of this. So he calls me a racist. He then spits in my face. This is at the start of COVID, when the lockdown was on. He spits in my face. At that point, I defend myself. I'm then arrested. But when I'm arrested, he's not arrested. I'm then arrested, and I'm arrested and charged, arrested and bailed. In fact, when I was arrested, I rang home. And I'd been in there about 12 hours, 14 hours or so. And I rang home and said, look, and as soon as I rang home, my mum was crying. I said, what are you crying for? He spat at me, I gave him a slap. I defended myself, it's nothing. She said, you're getting remanded. I said, what do you mean I'm getting remanded? She goes, I just spoke to your solicitor. They've put in to remand you. I said, what for? She said, they're doing perverting the course of justice. So what they've done is, what they don't realise, again, is that everything I record. So what they've done is, I've been to contact 4 or 5 people involved in this case. Yeah, when I sat down with them, I told them clearly, nothing I'm recording with you or interviewing with you, I'm not going to release any of this till after any court cases. Yeah, because I'm aware of the laws, but I want to tell the behind the scenes story. Now, the police had put in that 4 witnesses had complained. Yeah? Now, I know they hadn't. And I said to my solicitor, they haven't. I know they haven't. I'm in very good terms. They're working with me on a documentary. I know they haven't. But they'd put that, so they were going to a judge to say these accusations that I was affecting their trial. They were going to a judge to say that I'd assaulted a man. The man that I'd assaulted had put in a statement to say I called him a non-binary wanker. Yeah? So I was arrested on a hate crime. So all these things. So when I rang home, my mum's like, you're getting remanded again. Oh my God. Yeah. And I get into my interview. They relay all this to me. I sit there with my solicitor on TV screen because of COVID, then it weren't allowed to come. And then at the end of the interview, once we finish the interview, I laugh and say, by the way, officer, everything I do is on camera. Because they seized all of our cameras and things. Yeah. I said, I have a copy that's up there, yeah, that proves everything you've said is total bullshit. And if you remand me in jail, yeah, then from my prison cell, this will all be released. People, it's up there, mate. Yeah, I've got copies of it all. I can prove I didn't say anything about him being non-binary. I can prove he assaulted me. I can prove that I've sat down and had discussions with each witness to tell them none of this will be aired, none of this will do. I'm not perverting the course of justice. And then from being remanded, I got released on bail with bail conditions not to talk about grooming, not to talk about child sexual exploitation, not to enter Cumbria. And when they let me out of the police station, they actually gave me a police escort in cars, which I've recorded as well, out of Cumbria. Yeah, and they got me to the border of Cumbria. And for the last 6 months, I have been banned from entering Cumbria. But the whole time, so people can understand, because I've been on bail for all of these charges. Yeah. Now, when you're on bail, if you get in trouble again, you get remanded. Yeah. So obviously I went to Speaker's Corner whilst I was still on bail against my solicitor saying, don't.
Probably wasn't a good idea.
No, my solicitor said, do not do it. But I always do. I think I've always said if I'm right and if it's a cause that needs a spotlight on it, then I'll take the risk. I took the risk. I was arrested. So I was laying in. I lay there again in that prison cell in Wandsworth. I lay there again thinking I'm not getting out. And that's what I was laying there thinking. I thought, not again. But I did get out, and then I've received an email now because I'm supposed to answer bail for the Barrow case on the 3rd of December. But what they did is when I said I've got all the footage in the cloud, I've got it all. They then took me to court and the company I work for. So they looked at the company that owns the footage and they sent letters taking both to court. They took us to court. This went to court in Barrow and the judge gave them an order that we must seize every bit of footage we have to them. Now, what the hell has this got to do with... so they seized every bit of footage and then I was given a 7-day period or I'm in contempt of court. Yeah? So I had 7 days to give them every bit of original footage, memory sticks, everything. Yeah? So they get all of that. But I kept a copy the whole... So when I got in the police station, which they would still be thinking, how did he keep that copy of that footage? Yeah? How has he got that footage? So if I didn't have the footage, because I have the footage, yeah? They've now dropped the case, they've dropped everything. But when I went to court, because it's civil, because it went to the court to get a court order against me, when the judge ruled in their favour, it cost me £2,800 to try and stop them, yeah? Because they want all the footage of people telling me about their wrongdoings in their city, yeah? The investigation that I'm doing, journalists should be in outcry about this. I'm doing an investigative journalist piece on A, Barrow Police, on B, the gangs in the town, if they're operating, on C, the victim and and her story. So I'm doing this investigation myself. And then the police have come and took everything and wanted to see everything, which even our argument was that I have client privilege from the people I'm telling the story for. The judge ruled against me and then made me pay their costs, yeah? So I got another £5,500 bill. And then now they've dropped everything and said, and not just dropped it, they're actually now that they've actually got all the footage, yeah, which proves the innocence, they're now saying that they're opened their investigation into the man that spat in my face, yeah? So for 6 months I've been prevented from telling my news story. I'm back in Barrow this week to start back where I left off, which is telling the story of that town. Yeah. But to anyone who, I see a lot of people saying, where's Tommy? Yeah? I see a lot of comments asking, where's Tommy gone? Where's Tommy? As I said, I've had that hanging over my head, which I know if I step out of line, I'm in another nick in it. And what it seems like is, every time I try and tell a story, we were buzzing with the Barrow story. It was going to be a great documentary. They nicked me. They put conditions on me not to tell the story. Then it's dropped 6 months later. I told my cameraman at the time, he'd never been arrested, and I told him when we got arrested, I said, what happens now is, for 6 months, they'll use these conditions to limit what we can do, and they've only got a 6-month time frame now, then they'll drop it. So Barrow's out the window, they've dropped the charges, but the media run with stories that I assaulted someone. They run with...
I mean, you see this all the time. They say that the bit that they want to say...
Are they going to tell everyone now?
They never tell you the truth afterwards.
Will they tell people now that I've been cleared?
And of course, you're not going to get your £5,500 back, whatever it was, from the police.
And that's part of... It's all part of it.
Without going into specifics, Tommy, about particular cases, because some of one in particular I know is still pending, that law can be used against you. It can rack up enormous costs, which you have to pay to defend yourself. Even if you're found guilty, even if you're found innocent, you get nothing back. You could never redress those costs and get them back. So it's the law is used as a weapon. But that's bad enough. But if I can just come on to another topic I wanted to ask you about, which is, it's bad enough when you've got the police working against you and the legal system working against you. But do you want to say anything about the kind of personal intimidation and threats that you and your family have had to experience over this period of time as well?
Yeah, so in the sense that my wife, it's the age they've come to now where it affects them, whereas when they were younger it didn't.
They don't know what's going on.
They don't know what's going on. And none of the kids that age at 5, 6, 7, 8 are really giving them hassle. And as they've then got to, well, my children are 9, 11 and 13. They're then at the age where people are saying things. Aware. Yeah, they're aware. Yeah. People are saying things about that. YOLO. Anyone heard of YOLO? You've got kids? YOLO. Do not let your child have the app YOLO. Yeah. YOLO is an app that they download it, I think it's on their Snapchat, and then people can anonymously, their followers can anonymously make comments. I went through my son's. Man, like everything's about, it is psychological bullying.
Yeah.
Of you're going to get beat up, you're going to get attacked, you're going to get killed. My son's 11. And he has to read this, and I was so shocked reading it, thinking then about how his little head has been, all comments about, do you agree with what your dad does? Your dad's a racist, this. These are from his followers, yeah? And I just think, so if anyone's got YOLO, and then I look through, I'd already previously seen another girl made a comment about all lives mattering, who was my children's age, she was 11. She got destroyed on this YOLO app. And I remember watching it thinking, this is a professional trolling app for trolling people.
Yeah.
But yeah, but seeing the effect it's had, and I've seen the effect it's had on my children, that's the most upsetting thing.
Well, so moving on to a slightly different topic, which is that I think we're living in a kind of soft version of the Soviet Union now, which we've got into since last March. We've been gearing up for it for a long time. We've moved into it since last March when the pandemic started. But what they used to do in the Soviet Union to people who were dissidents was unperson them. So they removed their ability to function in society. Didn't have a job, didn't have an income, couldn't find somewhere to live. And you've had the modern equivalent of that in our society, being unpersoned. I mean, is it true now that you can't buy a property, you haven't got a bank account, you can't rent?
They closed, HSBC closed me down just, I'll tell you when it was. So you'd all have read that I was in Spain. I went to Spain.
Yeah.
I was in Spain and they just closed my bank account. And then I rang them up and said, I'm in Spain, you've closed my bank account. Like, oh yeah, I said, you haven't given me no notice that you closed my bank account. They said, we've shut your account down. We've sent you a cheque in the post. I said, yeah, but I've just told you, I'm in Spain with 3 kids. So how am I getting home? How am I doing anything? You need to reopen my bank account. They wouldn't. They didn't. So they just shut me down. Now that's HSBC. NatWest had already done this before. Yeah? PayPal, Stripe, what they do is, so they want to attack your ability to do the work you do.
Yeah.
So they attack every way possible if you try to earn living or earn finance, so, which is to stop you. I am now in a situation where undoubtedly I don't have my outgoings are more than my incomings, so that's not going to last much longer, and that's what they inevitably have wanted the whole time. I remember when I was in jail in 2011, I remember thinking, if my family did end up, I've had a lot of problems with my family, but if my family did end up relying on the state, where are the state going to house? Where are they going to house them? Then you're in trouble.
Yeah,
that's exactly what they're going to. So their aim, I'd say their aim right now is to bankrupt me. Yeah? So I'm bankrupt. And when I need to be reliant on the state, I know what they're going to do. You'll be given a property in the most Muslim populated area there is, because that's where they can. So that's what I believe their goal has been and goal is. So yeah, I'm in a situation where I can't have. I'm lucky that I've had a support base that supported me up to this point, but how do you can't carry on that support up until that point, because as I'm in court, this latest case I've got is going to total £600,000. It's impossible. Yeah, it's just impossible. So you can have the truth on your side, you can have the fight, you can't afford to fight it.
Yeah.
So you not just can't afford to fight it, but lawyers are putting in bills of £450 an hour and just racking up all these bills. Yeah. And it's just insane. I don't see how it can be a fair legal system, but that is where it is lawfare, and it's used in every instance. Yeah. So, and legal bill. Now I'm actually at the end of it all. I see where I'm going to be at, but that's what they've been working towards. That's their inevitable goal. They'll get their inevitable goal. But will that work in silencing and stopping what you're talking about? I can pick up a camera, or I have a cameraman who's working with me. We're telling two totally contrasting documentaries. Actually, they're going to be the total opposites. We've got one story in the town of Barrow, and we've got another city that we're looking at. And so I sit and I had a meeting with Peter, and I'm in quite a jolly, quite a happy mood in the sense of thinking about the work I'm doing, because I know they're going to be very powerful, and I know people sit and think, oh, we got rid of him, and I know when these two come out, they're going to be boom. No, you didn't. Yeah. No, you didn't.
Well, that was one of my, that's coming towards the end now, I suppose, Tommy. What are your plans going forward, and indeed, what are your options?
Well, I'm in court on the 30th of November, where I've been told if I'm convicted, I'm going to jail for giving a man who sexually assaulted a child. Allegedly sexually assaulted a child, for detaining him. That man who allegedly sexually assaulted a child has now been prosecuted and is charged, and he's in Crown Court for sexual assault against a minor. People are aware of that the minor is someone close to me. I've been warned. You know, the Attorney General? The Attorney General wrote to me about 8 weeks ago, sent me a letter warning me that men must be free to walk into court without feeling fear. So with regards to the man who has allegedly sexually assaulted someone close to me, if I talk about him, or if I was to encourage people or anything like that, then and the case they used in the letter they wrote to me as the test case was Yaxley Lennon versus the Crown. Yeah, it was the one. It was I swear he must just be trolling me, the Attorney General, because it was the one that they locked me up in Belmarsh for causing fear to the paedophiles who had been raping 100 girls in the city of Huddersfield. So that case there is what they used to warn me. So they're basically sending me a warning, and they said only because of COVID, we are not bringing you in now on contempt. And all I had said is about this man who died. So he has been charged. And none of the media have reported that this man's been charged. In fact, I face trial on the 30th of November. I'm at Luton Magistrates Court. I know people. I'm not organising a demonstration at all, yeah. But I am in court on the 30th of November at Luton Magistrates. And I'm charged with detaining, which is what I say. I detained a man who had sexually...
Citizen's arrest, isn't it?
I made a citizen's arrest against a man, and he got a bloody nose in the process. Who cares? Who cares? Yeah. He sexually assaulted a child. And that's it. So, and the police, and it's not me, and the police and the Crown Prosecution Service, the independent Crown Prosecution Service, have charged that man. Yeah, but he's not in court till next year. So I'm going to go to court and probably go to jail for causing someone a bloody nose 4 weeks before Christmas. Yeah. So that's another thing. So when people, I think I've been on bail for that. I'm facing this. I've got that coming up in a couple of weeks. So I don't see how a judge could ever send me to jail for that. I don't see how they can, but then again, I've seen what the law's done. I've seen the system in full operation.
I don't think we can trust anything now.
No. So I think there are,
I think there are good police out there, and I think there are good judges and lawyers, but I think there's an awful lot of bad ones as well. And the trouble is now they're institutions that they belong to are all permeated now with this political correctness.
They're politicised with this critical race theory.
Cultural Marxism, you can see it. And in fact, I know police officers who've taken early retirement, they're sick to death of it. In London, in the Met Police, you've got this absurd Cressida Dick person in charge of the whole thing, and that little...
Common purpose.
You know, and Sadiq Khan is the mayor, so that's not surprising the road that we're going down. So, in terms of your journalistic efforts, are you still going to try and...
Great, I've got 2 great stories, man. And COVID's come in the way a little bit with what we're doing on one of them, but I already know what we've got and the story we're telling. They're powerful, and that's in both, and they're total polar opposites.
Well, let's just finish off on this then. Who would have thought we'd be where we are today? Last March, prior to last March. They have brought, they call it communism, I've been calling it communism, but it isn't really, because this is being run by the globalists and the world elite and the people who control, the international financial institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, who are now, we've learned about in more recent years, the World Economic Forum. So it isn't communism. I'm sure there were idealistic communists back in Russia and China when they were trying to bring it about, but it isn't this. What they are actually trying to introduce is a new serfdom where people may think they're living under socialism, but in actual fact they're being controlled by an elite above who control vast amounts of money and resources. And it's what the thing that depresses me so much is the fact of how so many people have gone along with it
and buy into it.
With the mask wearing, which you only do 5 minutes research, you find out a mask won't protect you from a virus, any virus, because they go through the fibres of it. They're so microscopic.
And look at the SARS virus when people masked up and they all got ill.
And yet now we've had society brought to an end. You've got people can't get medical treatment. I think one of the most disgusting things that's happened in that sphere is where people can't visit dying relatives. This is absolutely appalling. Old people dying, husbands and wives, young children dying, and they're not allowed to see their loved ones.
That woman who got arrested for bringing her mum home.
Yeah.
See her family.
So now you're a prisoner in an old people's home, are you? It's gone from being a rest home to a gulag
because of a virus with like a zero.
Well, it's got 9.9%. The average age of death is 82 apparently.
Which is the average age of death anyway?
That's 80, I think. So you've got to be old and you've got to be ill in order for it to kill you. And the older you are, the more ill you. But that was true of flu.
It still is, yeah.
It always was true. If you weren't
and everything
very well,
that's now flu will be blamed on COVID.
Flu, and it could turn bad, and you could die. You could die of pneumonia or whatever. But this is where we are, and I think this is truly frightening about where we're going. I think, yes, it's a real virus. I believe, and indeed it wasn't my idea, that, lots of people are saying this, that it was a biologically engineered virus. It's been adapted from a bat virus in order to affect people. It's been released by accident, supposedly. I don't think it was an accident. I think it's too opportune for it to be an accident, because this whole plan about how the world has got to shut down was rolled out immediately.
Yeah.
Well, looked like they expected it, doesn't it? And there's lots of other evidence that they expected it was coming. And quite frankly, I don't know where we're going from here, about how we can resist this, quite frankly.
No one's, well, where we're going is, if Donald Trump loses, we're all in trouble.
Can we do, we'll talk about
that
separately, because that's a bigger subject. But I think he is the only thing standing between us and them, quite frankly.
I know.
I really enjoyed talking to you. Is there anything else you wanted to say? I don't think there's anything else we wanted to cover. I mean, are you going to try and continue with your journalistic efforts?
I am, but whether I'm in jail on the 30th of November or not.
What platforms can you go up?
Parler.
This is the thing.
Follow me on Parler.
I'm on Parler as well.
200,000.
200,000.
Up to nearly 200,000.
Yeah. Well,
it's the most downloaded app in the world this week, above TikTok, above YouTube, because of the censoring of Donald Trump on Twitter. Most conservative America are jumping on. They had 3 million new sign-ups this week.
Yeah.
So that all that's going to happen now is, if Donald Trump doesn't win the election, and he loses, then he'll be. I think they'll delete him straight off of.
Yeah, I think he needs to start up his own social media platforms and videos and Twitter.
There's so many jumping on that. Yeah, and that's hopefully.
He'll make an absolute bomb.
And hopefully, what might come out of this is that.
Well, that's about the best thing we can hope for.
But, hopefully he gives me a blue tick.
What I would say is, I don't think you do, is to need to write an update to that.
I've done it.
You've done it?
I've done it.
What's it going to be called?
It's called Prisoner of the State.
Prisoner of the State.
Right. It is, I'll say I've done it. It's there or thereabouts. It was there. It was there when I was in Spain. It was finished when I was in Spain, but I believe that the next 4 or 5 months in my life, I want to be able to tell the story at the end of the 4 or 5 months of where I'm at. Because I've had a lot go on in my personal life, and I want to talk about a lot of things, but they're still in the middle of it. Okay. So I thought, rather than get it out, I want to cover. I know what happens next week in court. I was going to get it out for Christmas, but now I'm really thinking that I think there's going to be a few more.
Don't worry, Christmas is probably going to be cancelled.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah. Santa's on lockdown.
Well, they would stop people going into churches. I mean, what's the first thing a communist regime does? It stops people going to church,
and they've terrified people. Yeah,
they're all terrified.
The media are terrified. My mum was one then.
Yeah.
They terrified her.
But this is the problem. They know that 80% of people get what they believe from the mainstream media, because they switch on in the morning radio while they're getting ready for work. They get the messages. They go and do what they've got to do during the day. They haven't got a lot of time to look into the details of what's going on. They've been programmed and conditioned by what they're hearing. And I absolutely hate the mainstream media now, because I think that they don't just get things wrong, they are just a propaganda machine for the people that run the world. Anyway, Tom, it's great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, man.
And hope to do it again when we've got some better news to talk about.
Yeah, not a court. That's all I talk about, is court. Yeah. I'm at court again. I'm in court more than the judge. Yeah, anyway.